I worked at companies the likes of Amazon, Microsoft, and currently I'm at ServiceNow, which is
Okay.
a tech SaaS company as an HR director. That wasn't a business that Amazon was in. That was a completely different industry. I helped build that. What got you where you are at this stage is not gonna get you where you're going. I would have wished I would have invested a lot earlier. If I was looking to give advice to someone that wants to move into tech,
I want to take a quick second to introduce everyone to my dear friend, Jose Castro. Jose, welcome to my YouTube channel.
I'm so glad to be here, Yasir.
Thank you for taking the time. I know you have had an illustrious career, one that's probably the envy of many people. So I would love, could you briefly just tell us a little bit about your background, career-wise?
Yeah, sure. And again, thanks, Yasir, for the invite to your YouTube channel. So I've been in HR for about 15 years, primarily in tech. Although I did start my career right out of college at AT&T, and then from there I worked at companies the likes of Amazon, Microsoft, and currently I'm at ServiceNow, which is a tech SaaS company as an HR director.
Fantastic. Wow, what an wow, that's amazing. So, you know, it sounds like you've been all over the place. Some of the better known companies, AT&T, you've worked at Amazon, you worked at Microsoft, you're at ServiceNow. What are the key differences between those companies that maybe how you had to pivot to be successful?
What are the key differences that allow me to pivot between both of those, or between all those companies, rather? I think that there are really big similarities in technology. So usually it's a high growth environment. However, I think culturally there might be some differences. So being able to learn what's unique about the culture, add to the culture, and continue to grow within that culture, I think is really important.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been great working at all those different organizations.
So you really need to be flexible, because I imagine the culture at Microsoft and Amazon and ServiceNow are all very different.
100%. They're very, very different. You know that the culture at Amazon, for example, when I worked there, was very early in stages. So they were about maybe, I think they're between 10 to 15 years old as an organization.
Okay.
So you think about that high growth pace, it's very much trying to capitalize the market. At that time, online retail was not that big. It was big, but it wasn't that big.
Right.
So there was only about 50 locations in the US. So it was very, very much early days.
Wow.
For Amazon. And at Microsoft, well, Microsoft is coming up on 50 years as a company.
Wow.
So they're very much at a different phase. They're on their third CEO with Satya Nadella. It's a different environment currently. They've went through a people transformation, a digital transformation. So it was very interesting to pivot from Amazon to Microsoft, and then now back to ServiceNow, that is currently growing, a very fast growing organization as well.
Right.
That is pivoting to different CEOs. It has a really great outlook and a growth outlook. So it's great. It's been really, I think flexibility is certainly the word.
Yeah, I mean, so like going from Amazon, which was, I would say, like a rocket ship, to Microsoft, which was kind of steady state, back to another rocket ship.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
But the demands are different. The requirements are different. Now, Jose, a lot of my audience is a little bit younger than us.
Okay.
So some of them are in college.
Yeah.
Others are in their first job out of college. But everybody wants to work in tech right now. Tech is the gold rush of the 21st century. What advice would you give to a young person in their career who's trying to graduate college, is still in college, or is in their first role trying to move into tech?
I think the one thing that I would say is make sure you put yourself in a position to learn from people that are in those roles. So there's a lot of, for example, there's a lot of industry events that occur that invite early in career or not even in career students to those events.
Right.
I would recommend anyone to go to those events, put themselves in the shoes of those developers, those corporate functions, those recruiters, those HR folks, and understand what a day in the life looks like at these tech companies.
Right.
Build those networks, and it's going to help you get in for sure.
Yeah, sounds fantastic. What do you think is there a pivotal moment or some project that you did that helped accelerate your career? I mean, you have worked at some of the most
Yeah.
amazing Fortune 500 companies, right? And you're an HR director, which is like, we all got dreams, baby. So
Yeah, if pivotal moments, I think we've all had them, right? And if I think of a pivotal moment for me, Yasir, is working for a startup within Amazon. So Amazon, if you recall, about 10 years ago, all of their products were delivered by third parties, UPS, FedEx, DHL, Postal Service, right? And then now all you see is the Amazon vans,
right.
Rivian vans, Amazon, Mercedes vans, Amazon uniform employees delivering.
Yeah.
That's a whole new model. You think it's like just a flip of a switch? That wasn't a business that Amazon was in. That was a completely different industry. I helped build that.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was part of the core HR team that helped establish that business unit.
Wow.
At the time, we had less than 15 locations in the U.S. Right now there's probably over 500.
Wow.
Right, and
500 locations.
500 locations, delivery points, right, where they receive the product, they load it into vans, and they go out to all zip codes and deliver them and come back with any undelivered product or whatever, right? But we had to build that from scratch. And if I could tell you something, that was character building. I mean, we had all kinds of problems happen, all kinds of issues occurred. I mean, we had to always pivot, change. Okay, this doesn't work. This works in this environment, but not here. Oh, we didn't even think about this, right? What happens when there's inclement weather?
Right.
What happens when there's an accident in the road? I mean, we had things that we were just like, yeah, had no idea that would occur, you know?
Right.
So
but obviously it's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen. It makes you a better professional. You know, this leads to a very, very important lesson from that. And I think the lesson is, if you ever get an opportunity to participate in something new to you or new to the company, or be in a role that is gonna stretch you, always take it. Always take it.
Always. Yeah.
Yep, it's very, very important, because I think you're going to be able to learn so much from that. And I tell you, I think the lessons I learned during those, it was 5 years. I still leverage now at ServiceNow. So I leverage them at Microsoft. I leverage those lessons now. I think they are very formidable. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. You know, I used to work with the former CFO of Tesla when he worked at Google. His name was Jason Wheeler. And one of the most invaluable lessons he told me was always choose growth. Right. And so this sounds like a moment where you always chose growth.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I agree.
Tell me, what does HR actually do? Like, what do you guys do in a process like that? Right?
Sure. So what does HR do? Well, if you think about any function, there's always sub functions, right?
Right.
So oftentimes with HR, when you think of HR, you're thinking of items like recruiting, benefits and comp, maybe those type of items, right? What I have been doing the last 10 to 15 years has been in the HR business partner space.
Okay.
And really what this means is every unit, every organization, every department of a company has objectives. At the end of the day, right, we are trying to please the customer. If it's a for-profit organization, we're trying to capitalize the market, make a profit, et cetera, right? We have business outcomes that we want to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
As an HR business partner, my primary objective is to help the business achieve those through our most important asset, which is our people. So when you think about initiatives internally that we set, right, around culture building or DEI or items to where you think about where the company is going to be 2 to 3 to 5 years from now. That's the space that I play in to help
Wow.
achieve organizations get to that end goal, but through a method of working through their organization and leveraging their people assets. A big part of what I do is having the right people at the right places at the right time.
Mm.
Right? Like that's exactly it. Like
Yeah.
and especially in a growing organization, Yasir, it's super important to have the right players
Right.
because what got you where you are at this stage is not going to get you where you're going. So you have to have the right talent at the right time to help you get to those stages. So the current workforce you have, you got to be upskilling, up leveling, you got to have initiatives to grow that talent. And then if you're looking to build the market, you also have to be looking externally as to who you can leverage to bring in to help foster that talent growth that you need.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot of great talent, and you're really just making sure that people are where they need to be, doing the things that they need to do to get the company to where it needs to be.
That's right.
Do you have a moment in your career that you would consider like a failure? And how did you bounce back from that? And how do you recommend other people bouncing back from that?
Well, now I don't consider any of them a failure because now I'm like, wow, that was a setup for something new. Like now I'm like, wow, like that really set me up for where I am today.
Right.
And it also makes me think of if I have failures or disappointments or setbacks now, I can look back on those instances and remember it's like, yeah, but you had an instance in the past where it actually was a blessing in disguise. And yeah, there's one, Yasir, that really comes to mind. It was really tough because I had just graduated from the University of Florida and got my first job. You know how excited you are when you get that first job.
Oh
You're
yeah,
like, I'm
that
finally,
first paycheck.
you're like, I'm finally getting paid. I'm like, I'm putting this diploma to work.
Hell
You are
yeah.
like super pumped. Your family's proud. You're like, ooh, my little baby's making money.
My Joselito has a job.
All that stuff, right? Well, I got fired 3 months in.
Oh.
I got fired 3 months in, Yasir.
Out of your first job out of college?
My first job out of college.
3 months in.
3 months in. And
that has to hurt.
it stung. I mean, that really affects your ego. And not your ego, your self-confidence, rather.
Right.
Yeah, your ego too, but your self-confidence more than anything. And I was, I was joined this organization that was creating this development program, and the expectation was that everyone that joined wasn't going to make it. It was like at the end there was X amount of slots, and that's how it worked.
Right.
Maybe you have 30 and then 10 make it at the end or something like that.
Right.
And it was a great organization. I mean, great organization. The pay was phenomenal at the time. And I got to relocate to a different state I'd never been in, right? I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. But I got cut 3 months in.
Wow.
So here I am having to drive back. I was in Georgia, driving back home, with the tail between my butt. Like, man, I messed up. Like, I don't have a job. My friends are all like having these great jobs at these big banks and awesome companies. Some of them are still back in school, wrapping up their final semester. And I went back home, dust myself off, and then I was like, I got to get back to school and interview again for more roles.
Right.
But at that point, I had already graduated, and I was just there to find new roles, new jobs.
Wow.
And as I was going to interview with new companies, one of the things they ask is like, hey, what how's your last year of school going? Or what do you aspire to do once you graduate? Well, my response to that was like, I actually graduated 6 months ago.
Wow.
And they would be like, oh, you haven't been working. And you have to remember, this is a time where the economy wasn't that great either.
Right.
It was really tough to find a job during this time frame. We had just bounced out of the Great Recession, and companies were really, really tight. They weren't hiring that much. So here I am trying to get back into landing a job.
Yeah.
So that was a really big, at the time, it was a really big failure, I think. But it really gave me, it gave me a lot of perspective in life. It made me, you know what it also did? It made me feel very fortunate about things. Like I was very, I looked at things in a different lens. And it also made me work that much harder.
Right.
Because I felt what that felt like.
Right.
I felt that sting. So when I got...
And you never wanted to feel that again.
I never wanted to feel that again. And the very job right after that was working at Amazon, which I was there for almost 8 years.
Wow.
And that was great, right? And I immediately started with that just past experience in mind. So I was very more intentional, way more dedicated. So I think it ultimately worked out, but at the time it hurt a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't even imagine. I've known you for a long time, right? And I have watched you achieve amazing things, both in your career and in your personal life. How do you think about planning your personal life?
How do I think about the way that I plan my personal life is I think great advice that I heard is, where do I want to be 5 or 10 years from now? Right? And it's very interesting and it's kind of nerdy to think about, but oftentimes at Amazon, there's this mantra internally in the company where they always say, start with the customer and work backwards.
Right.
Which basically just means what's the desired outcome that you want? And then walk backwards from there, because it's going to give you actionable items and mechanisms to be able to achieve that.
Right.
So what I try to do is, where do I want to be? What do I want to accomplish 5, 10, 15 years from now? And just work backwards from there and do tangible items now that's going to help me get there. And you can apply this to any aspect of life. This could be financial goals, could be relationship goals. This can be goals in your career. You can always have that end goal and just continue to peel that back and work backwards.
So, that's a very interesting point about working backwards. Let's work backwards here, because my question to you is, did you know you were going to be here 15 years ago? Because we've been friends since we met in 2009.
2009.
So that was like 15
Wow.
years ago.
Yeah, it was. Yes and no.
Where were you 15 years ago?
Sure. So 15 years ago, what year would that have been? That would have been 2009.
Well, 2009, we were at University of Florida together. We
Sure.
met each other.
Yeah.
So maybe a little bit before that.
Little bit before.
Let's call it 20.
Oh, wow. Okay. You're bringing me way back. All right. So
Port St. Lucie.
So I think the audience may know my age at this point. Yeah.
That's an HR violation. Don't ask them.
Yeah. 20 years ago, Yasir, I don't think I even knew what HR was, to be honest. I didn't know what HR was. I didn't know a lot about these tech companies, very little. And at that time, I mean, let's go back. What would that have been? Like 2004, 2005, around there?
Yeah.
2005? Yeah. No, 20 years ago, I had dropped out of high school. So I was out of high school. At that time, I think what I envisioned for my life, career-wise, was to just get like a GED and work in the trades. Electrician, plumber, roofer, whatever it could be, right?
Right.
That's what I envisioned, because I know that you can make, good money, you can make a living for yourself and your family, and that's what I aspire to be, right? And as I was doing that, because remember, I had dropped out of high school and I was trying to get my GED, I was absolutely determined to get my GED, but do it in a good manner. So
Right.
I wanted to pass. I got my GED, and then I was like, you know what? Let me take some general ed classes. It can't hurt. And I really enjoyed it, right? I was like, I really miss going to school. and I was very laser focused on just getting good grades. So I was grinding and grinding, right? I would stay after school. I would talk with the professors and the teachers and make sure that I was absolutely getting everything down right. And I was working full time. I think at the time I had like 3 jobs.
Wow.
Yeah, I was working full time and I was studying and I think that that whole mindset that I had during that time was this mindset of don't miss an opportunity.
Right.
Because I felt like I had missed an opportunity in life. Right? Because I dropped out of high school, I missed out on what I saw my peers go through.
Right.
Right? Graduating and the prom and the end of year festivities and the celebrations and this. I was like, I am not gonna miss an opportunity. I'm gonna seize the moment and really, really nail this. And I did. I got a 4.0. I was just absolutely laser focused, and ultimately that led me to the University of Florida. Go Gators!
Go Gators!
Go Gators! Because that's where I met you.
Right.
Right. That's where I met you. And I'll tell you this. Even then, Yasir, I didn't even know what I wanted to do. Right. I think at first I was a finance major. Then I was then I changed it to marketing. And then I was looking at jobs in sales or retail. So I was just kind of like all over the place.
Yeah.
But one thing's for sure, I was very laser focused. I was very disciplined, and I was just really taking advantage of the opportunities I had. So I didn't exactly know that I was gonna be here. That for sure I didn't. But I knew that I was determined. And it's funny because it's interesting because I had this goal of being like an electrician, for example.
Okay.
Right? But then I got my GED and then I started getting A's. So I scratched that out. I was like, that's no longer that's old goals, right?
It just doesn't make sense for you anymore.
It doesn't make sense anymore, right? So I was like, maybe I'll be a X-ray tech, right? A little bit more technical, a little bit more in a professional medical setting. It's like, I don't know if I want to do that. And plus, I feel like I'm only a year or 2 away from getting my AA. Maybe I could go ahead and get my bachelor's.
Right.
So every couple of months or 6 months or so, the goal changed. And that's just what ended up happening throughout, my student career and then my professional career.
Right. So you got more and more options.
I did.
More and more options. And you're always pushing and challenging yourself to be better and better and better.
That's right.
You went to University of Florida. One of the recurring themes that I hear all the time with college graduates is that like, oh, they don't make a lot of money and they have some student debt. Did you experience any of that? Did you ever have debt?
Yes, absolutely. So I didn't come from a very wealthy family by any means. So the only way that I was going to go to college was if I paid for it, if I got a scholarship, or if I got student loans. And I didn't really get a lot of scholarships because, I got my GED and kind of worked and hustled my way into UF practically. But I did get some, student loans and a couple grants. But college is expensive, man.
Yeah.
It's expensive. Yeah, it's expensive, man. So I had to like fill the gap with student loans and credit cards.
Wow.
So when I eventually graduated from UF, I had close to $30,000 in credit card debt, and I had like $20,000 to $25,000 in student loans.
Wow.
So I had a ton of debt.
How much was that in total?
It was about $45,000, $50,000.
$45,000, $50,000.
Yes.
And you were 22?
2 or so,
Yeah.
yeah, 22 or so, yeah. And I was making $20.44 an hour, is what my job was essentially, right? Which I thought was great. I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I was making great money. So I know.
How much is that annualized?
It was about 40,000.
Okay.
About 40,000.
Which is objectively not that much.
Yeah, I mean,
when you're 20 years old, you're
right. I was happy.
Right.
I felt like I could, pay my rent, whatever. But I kept living that same lifestyle that I had in college. So in college, it was really easy to, let me order Jimmy John's, let me go to Chipotle. Oh, I'm grinding in the library, I'm studying, whatever. Let me not cook out, whatever. Let me, go here, or friends are going out. I want to go out as well. All that adds up, and it just
Right.
keeps adding up and adding up and adding up. And I remember when I was first out of college, I would buy a coffee a day. Like, and I'm not knocking anyone that buys a coffee a day, or anything like that. But for me, that added up to a lot.
Right.
I would buy Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts every single day. And, that's a couple,
That's $4 or $5 a day.
$4 or $5 a day, a couple $100 a month,
Right.
And that's just one, miscellaneous thing.
Right.
If you add in all these other things, ankle biters are big things that that add up. I was just frivolously spending money.
Right.
And I had to change that this year. I had to start canceling that because I was up to here with that. I mean, I was just barely making the interest payment, let alone tackling the principal.
Wow.
So every bit of money that I could scrap went to my debt. If I had like some kind of bonus from work or some RSUs that came, I would sell them and boom, put them into debt.
Right.
And I cut out all of those little things that I was spending, so I could save money. And then just other things, right? Like if you get a car, like I remember I had a car that, I got like $4,000 or $5,000 under market value because I had hail damage. And I was like, yeah, I don't care. I was like, let me get that car, man.
She drives,
yeah,
right?
I was like, it drives fine. And I mean, let's not even talk about cars because I had a bunch of crazy cars. But I had, a car that, and I was like, but I was just trying to save money so I can get out of that debt.
Yeah.
Took me a couple years, but I was able to, and that just freed up so much. I mean, if you think about one of the most things, if I could go back, is I would have wished I would have invested a lot earlier. A lot earlier. I would have participated in that boom, because right after the Great Recession, we went on like a 10 to 12 year bull run.
Right.
And I wasn't able to because I was tackling that debt. So that's if I could go back, I would have maybe adjusted my spending a lot earlier so I didn't have as much debt, so I could have participated in investing a lot earlier.
So, interestingly, a lot of Americans today have debt, whether it's credit card debt or student loan debt or auto debt. And what is the mindset difference between someone who has debt? Like, what's your mindset when you have debt? And what is your mindset now that you kind of like live a debt-free life? How do you think about money differently?
What's the mindset differences with someone that has that, like how I did, and now that I don't have that? I think the one thing for me, Yasir, is just the peace of mind. The peace of mind that you have not having debt. Not carrying over balances and not having to worry about interest payments, etc., whatever it might be. It just changes things.
Right.
It makes you more loose. You get to travel, sleep better at night. At work, you perform a lot better.
Right.
So I think that's been probably the biggest thing. And what ends, another thing that I will add is once you start getting some tangible wins. So in this example, it would be like saving money and seeing money build. It kind of gets addicting.
Really?
Yeah, like you kind of like want to do more and more, right? You like to see that, money build up,
right,
so to speak, right? So you're like, actually, I'm gonna save more, right? And I'm gonna save more money and more money. So it becomes like this compounding effect. And I will also say too, it helped me that I was around people that were also like-minded. I think that's really important because if I was traveling a lot or going on these like really luxurious vacations or whatever. And I traveled a lot. I mean, I traveled quite a bit with my friends, but we were all of the same mindset, and we could do like a weekend or a 4-day weekend or whatever, and not spend that much because we were eating and we would do things that weren't expensive because a lot of it was free.
Right.
A lot of it's outdoor activities and stuff like that. So being within that company of like-minded individuals really helps.
Yeah, I mean, they say that you're like the average of your closest 5 friends or something like that.
Yeah, then I would agree.
Yeah. So what's next for you, Jose? Like, I mean, you've achieved, you're a HR director at a Fortune 500 company. You're debt free, financially independent, right? What's the next chapter for you? Because you talked about this 5-10 year plan. Like, what is your 5-10 year plan?
Yeah.
Do you have one?
What's really I'm actually instilling it now.
Okay.
So I'm doing things now to get to that 5-year plan, which is great. And I think number one, you got to communicate it with people at your company or your bosses or whatever. So my organization knows exactly what my 5-year plan is.
Okay.
Which is good. Matter of fact, they knew before I even started because
Right.
I talked about it during my hiring interview. But yeah, I wanna have a global impact and work and live abroad. So international experience.
Wow.
Yeah, and
Anywhere in particular?
I Latin America.
Latin America.
Yeah, I Latin America. Just I know the language. I like the culture. I'm from Honduras. I was born in Honduras, so it's there's an affinity there for sure.
Yeah, right.
So, but yeah, I mean, I support a Latin American team now from the U.S. And, part of my development plan is to head in that direction. So I could see myself doing that in the next 5 years.
Got it. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
It would be great to move to Latin America, like explore from like the lens of a non-tourist.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Jose, you've given us so much of your time. If you could recommend us a book that has made a meaningful impact in your personal life or your career or anything, like what book would you say that you'd recommend?
This book is not a business book, although I think it really impacts you from a business perspective.
Okay.
But a book that I would recommend is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Okay.
I think it is fantastic book about this shepherd boy on this journey to follow his dream. So he had a dream and he's following this dream, and along the way he meets all of these people that impact his life, and ultimately he's chasing this dream. I won't spoil the book if you haven't read the book, but I think it's really internal. I think when you read it, it's going to make you think about what's important in your life, and it's going to really make you want to follow and chase that dream.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a quick read too. You can read it in a plane ride.
Right.
So I highly recommend it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. I've read that book and I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorites. Jose Castro, everyone.
Thank you. Make sure you subscribe.